What up? What up? Happy Friday and welcome to the Faith Unbuttoned podcast. I'm your host, Pastor K. We are an extension of Never Alone Christian Center, a virtual ministry based in Baltimore, Maryland that my wife and I launched in the summer of 2021. Thank you guys for your continued support. Thank you for dropping by our website at neveralonecc.org. And we want to let you know that we love you, we're praying for you, and we're excited about what God is not only doing at Never Alone Christian Center, but we're also thankful for the Faith Unbuttoned podcast, where I have an opportunity as the pastor to address topics and subject matters in a more relaxed setting. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Never Alone Christian Center. Turn on the notifications so that you may be up to date with all the teachings, the sermons, and all the podcasts and everything else happening at NEC. We thank you for your subscription. We thank you for following and liking our Facebook and our Instagram. We are excited, but we understand that you are our audience, and our audience must be connected. In order to do that, you gotta like, follow, share, and subscribe. All right, now that the business is out the way, happy holidays. I hope that everyone had a good Thanksgiving. I hope that your holidays are continuing to go the way that you desire. And once again, keep in mind, it's not all about the gifts and all about the celebration of Christmas, if that's what you celebrate. But it's about spending time with family if you have an opportunity to do that. It's about sharing love and being kind to one another. And absolutely, please do not go dive into some deep, dark hole called debt. Trust me, I've been there. My wife and I have been there, and it sucks trying to climb out that hole, all right? So keep that in mind throughout the course of the holidays, and we're praying for safe travels if you guys are traveling, and safety just for you all in general throughout the course of the holidays. Well, we began a topic last week entitled, "My Spouse is Overwhelmed. How Can I Help?" And we began to tackle this from several different angles because my wife and I, as you guys know, we've been married for almost 15 years coming up here in March. And there are times where I've been overwhelmed. There's been times when my wife has been overwhelmed, and we've had to help each other through the challenges that happen in life. Life can be overwhelming. And I say that to say that don't be down and out if you feel overwhelmed, because sometimes life just takes a toll on us and it can drag us down. With that said, let me give you the phone number for the Suicide Prevention Hotline. If you ever come across that bridge where you feel like you don't want to live anymore, or you know anyone who may be in that predicament, there is help out there and it's free. There are people that will talk to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. And the Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-271-8255. And there you can find the help that you need if you're going down a path that you feel like that you don't want to do life anymore. And that is a very dark path. And I am praying for you if you ever feel like that or you have felt like that, because that is a place that you don't want to be in life. Life is valuable. Value your life. You are precious to God. You say, well, Pastor K, I don't feel precious, but you are precious to God. Okay? You're precious, all right? So, my spouse is overwhelmed. How can I help? How can I help? Now, this topic came out of, I was doing some research on the top 25 problems found within marriage and relationships. And being overwhelmed ranks up there high in the midst of marriages and relationships that have problems. Now, last week we looked at some signs we should look for when our spouse is possibly overwhelmed. Now, if you missed last week's podcast, it's cool. Visit the YouTube channel. It's on the playlist, the Faith Unbuttoned podcast, and you can catch up to make sure that you get all the information. But tonight, I want to get to the new information. Now, keep in mind, with this particular topic, my spouse is overwhelmed. How can I help? We wanted to look at, number one, signs to look at for if your partner or your spouse is overwhelmed. And number 2, we want to look at some helpful tips that we can engage or take part in to help our partner through these particular situations. Now, last week we looked at some signs that we should recognize and we want to pick up on. We looked at mood change. We looked at forgetfulness. We looked at an increase of habits such as drinking, smoking, or pornography. We looked at a lack of appetite or an increase in appetite. And we looked at unnatural hair loss. Okay, so those were 5 signs that we looked at last week. Now, tonight, we're going to look at 2 more signs of what we can look for if our spouse is possibly overwhelmed. And then we want to jump into some helpful tips that I believe that will help us through helping our spouse if they're overwhelmed. Now, keep in mind, I'm a pastor, okay? I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist, okay? These are biblical-based principles, and these are principles based upon other psychologists and people in this field in therapy who have put their information out in books, and I'm relaying it to you. That's my disclaimer, okay? All right, so let's look at number 6. What are some signs that we can look for if our spouse is possibly overwhelmed with life, overwhelmed with work, overwhelmed with the children, overwhelmed with our marriage? What are some things that we can look for? Okay, we covered 5. Number 6, we should be looking for a decrease in hygiene. A decrease in hygiene. If you notice that your spouse, your partner, whatever state you find yourself in, okay, begins to exhibit a decrease in hygiene, such as a lack of brushing their teeth, a lack of applying lotion, if that's what they do on a regular basis, a lack of care to their grooming, a lack of deodorant, a lack of showering and taking baths. If we start to notice a decline in hygiene, this could possibly be a sign that your spouse or partner has become overwhelmed with something taking place in their life. They're now at the point where they do not do the things to maintain their hygiene, which are natural. The things that they consistently did, such as brush their teeth, put deodorant on, take a shower, etc., they are now missing days on end. You're starting to recognize they are not grooming themselves in the posture that they have in the past. This can be an immediate sign of someone possibly slipping into depression. It can definitely be a sign to say that they're overwhelmed because they are beginning to exhibit signs of not caring about their hygiene. If your husband and your wife, your spouse, your partner, whatever, brushing their teeth 2-3 times a day, they always have deodorant, they're always lotion, they're always maintaining their grooming appearance, and all of a sudden there is a decrease or a decline. Houston, we have a problem. We have a problem here because now we're beginning to go into things that are unnatural or uncommon for day-to-day living. And this is a sign that we should recognize. You say, well, Pastor K, I have noticed that my husband or my wife, they used to spend a great deal of time in their grooming, and now it just seems as if they don't care. Okay, they're not taking time to do their hair. They're not taking the time to take the bath or take the shower. Their focus doesn't seem to be on their appearance or their day-to-day hygiene. Well, we have a problem here. It's time to have a conversation. Hun, is everything okay? Is something going on at work? Is something going on with the children? Is something going on in your business? Is something going on with the finances? What is going on? Because I noticed that the things that you customarily did to maintain your hygiene, because baby, you always look fly and always smell good, and you got to butter this up a little bit. You've always taken care of your nails and your feet and your grooming, and now it seems like those things don't really matter anymore. So I just want to make sure that you're okay. Men, husband, don't be afraid to engage in these conversations. Well, Pastor K, you don't know my wife. If I come at her like that, I might be on a couch. Well, listen, as I said in the last podcast, you would rather know something is wrong than to ignore the signs. And that goes for wives as well. Wives usually don't have a problem addressing their husband. But if you do, have a conversation. Okay? Once again, we're looking at some possible red flags, some possible signs that there is a shift taking place and your spouse is possibly overwhelmed. Okay? So decrease in hygiene. Let's look at number 7 here. Number 7. If your spouse or partner has to or begin to use sleep aids to go to sleep, or maybe they are no longer sleeping as normal, they're now restless, tossing and turning, or they're always tired. So I gave you three parts under that number 7. They are using a sleep aid to go to sleep, and they've never done this before. They're restless. They're tossing and turning. They're not getting any sleep. Or they're always tired. They're always asleep. Okay? These are possible signs that your spouse may be overwhelmed with life. Something is taking their peace away. They're customarily sleep like a baby, and now all of a sudden they're tossing and turning all the time. Typically they would just go to bed, but now they're popping 2 and 3 pills and trying all type of methods to cause them to fall asleep and to stay asleep. You notice that they're always tired, they're always napping, they're always asleep, and this is not something they ordinarily do. Don't miss these easy signs that we can overlook as a spouse, because they could be giving us an indication that something is wrong. They're possibly overwhelmed. They're possibly going through some type of mental struggle. Maybe there's a crisis taking place on their job. I know with my job in law enforcement, I don't bring all that stuff home to my wife. Occasionally we might have conversations, and if there are times that I need to vent or if I need to get stuff off my chest, then we'll have those conversations, or I'll find a partner at work or a colleague or someone that I can talk to so that I make sure that I can get stuff off my chest. Because when you allow stuff to build up and baggage to build up, then it becomes those problems. Then these signs begin to flow: mood change, forgetfulness, a lack of appetite, decrease of hygiene, etc. These things begin to happen when we become overwhelmed. I know sometimes as men, we are raised to carry the load, and we're not allowed to be upset, or we're not allowed to be down and out. We have to be the burden bearers. But I'm here to tell you that carrying the burden gets heavy. Scripture tells, if you want to step into the Bible real quick, that we cast our burdens, cast our cares on the Lord. We're not built to carry the worries of the job, the worries of education, the worries of the marriage. We're not built to carry them. We have to turn them over to the Lord. Now, let me say this. Don't be a fool and say, well, I just turned it over to God. Well, you have to have a conversation with your wife or your husband. You can't just be like, well, I prayed about it and let's hope it just disappears. This is not a genie in a bottle type situation. You have to do things that are natural, like have conversations. How often do you talk to your wife? How often? Outside of day-to-day conversation of kids and work and finances, etc. How often do you just have a normal, regular conversation about life? How you feeling? Why I ain't pouring all my emotions out like that? Why'd you get married for then? If you don't want to talk to her, why we get married? I'm not yelling. I'm sorry. I'm not yelling. But I get upset when men and women get into these relationships and then they don't want to talk to their husband and their wife. And do you want the pastor and the therapist and the psychologist and the police officer and the judge to create some magic to make your marriage work? No, there's no magic. It's called communication. Okay? All right, so that was 7. Well, those were 2 additional. Put the 2 podcasts together, episode 15 and this one is 16, of some possible signs that your spouse may be overwhelmed. And let me say this. Don't ignore what you see. Don't ignore what you see. I'm often disturbed when you hear stories of mothers and, drowning all the children, or, fathers killing the whole family, or, taking out the grandmother. I'm disturbed, and I say, God, why do these things have to happen in this world? I heard one discussion this week, and I'm going to get into these tips, saying, what kind of God do we serve that would create people that would kill other people? Well, we serve a God that gave us a will. He didn't create us to be robots. He gave us a will. And the will of man and the lack of love in the heart of man has grown and has waxed cold, as the scripture says. And we're doing, as mankind, things that would be unthinkable to one another. Sometimes I think, and it's just sad, as much as I'm ready for the Lord to return to take us unto him, I know that there are so many people who need Jesus. And I pray that God will continue to show his mercy and his grace. All right, I stepped off into a little spiritual tangent right there. Okay. All right, so let's look at this. What are some practical tips that we can help our spouse if they are overwhelmed? Some practical tips. Number one, all right, practice acceptance. Practice acceptance. We have to accept life situations and current circumstances as they are. Denial can become a relationship killer. If we deny that we are struggling with something in our personal life and we're overwhelmed and we're in denial about it, or our spouse is in denial, or we as a partner are in denial that our spouse is going through something, it can become a relationship killer. Why? Because now these signs, these issues begin to fester in the relationship, and they cause problems. Now I've been overwhelmed, and I'm struggling with my hygiene. I'm struggling with my slumber at night, and I'm overwhelmed. My wife is in denial that I'm going through something, and now it starts useless arguments in the home. Pointless arguments. No place for the argument to go. Practice acceptance. In other words, we have to acknowledge there is a problem. Let's acknowledge that I'm overwhelmed. Hun, I'm going through some stuff. I'm going to acknowledge it. Let's practice acknowledging problems. Okay? We practice the school of thought of practice makes perfect is a flawed philosophy, in my opinion. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes improvement. You practice to improve your best, to improve your best, to improve your best. Perfection shall or may not never happen. You practice to improve. Okay? A basketball player practice their free throws to shoot a very high percentage. But I haven't seen any records where they shoot 100%. So practice makes perfect, even for the greatest, is a flawed philosophy. Practice makes improvement. So if you want improvement in your relationship, in your marriage, practice acceptance. Hun, I'm going through something. Hun, it looks like you're going through something. Start practicing addressing the problems, and then start practicing solving the problems, and then we will find that we have less problems. Okay? So that's tip number one, practice acceptance. Tip number two, be mindful. Be mindful. In other words, do not shut your spouse down. Don't do that. Don't shut your spouse down if they're going through something. If you see they've had a hard day at work, you see they've had a tough time with the children, you see they're going through stuff, don't shut your spouse down. If they're trying to talk to you and you're watching the game, playing your video game, you're on your phone, you're cooking, whatever you're doing, and your spouse is trying to reach out to you, don't shut them down. Do not ignore them. Be mindful of your spouse or partner. Be sensitive to them. I would like to believe that I'm sensitive to my wife's desires and her needs. Have I met them all? Probably not. Probably not. Because I'm human. And we're still working them and growing our marriage just like anybody else. But I will say that I am mindful, or I would like to believe that I'm mindful when she's going through something. Okay? All right, let's wrap it up there. We'll pick up with 3, 4, 5, and 6 in our next podcast. Listen, my final thought. I said this earlier in the podcast. Do not ignore what you see or what you hear. Because what you see is probably real. What you hear probably has life to it. Okay? No relationship or marriage, or even if you're unmarried, deserves to be put in a situation where you're overwhelmed and you don't have help. There is help available, but we have to seek the help or become the help for our partner. Okay? Listen, I love you guys. I hope that you guys continue to have a good weekend. Don't forget to join us this Sunday. Streaming at 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. We stream on our YouTube channel. We're beginning to shift all our videos and all our teachings to our YouTube channel and making it the hub. You always can obviously stream on Facebook as well as the website at neveralonecc.org. But YouTube is becoming the hub. So if you ever want to see a video, see a sermon, see a message, go to YouTube, find the playlist that you're looking for, and there you will find all the teachings. And as we begin to grow, we'll begin to add the conferences and the classes and everything to the hub. Okay? All right. I love you guys once again. Be blessed. Be safe. Thank you for continuing to participate in the Faith Unbuttoned podcast. Your participation is noticed. All right? Let's go.